Talkin Cougars is presented by Flat Stick Pub. Local craft beer, old school fun, memorable moments. Welcome to Talkin Cougars. I'm former Washington State quarterback Alex Brink here with my receiver, Michael Bumpus. Bump, Cougs went down to Autzen Stadium against a top 10 team and gave them everything they could handle. The Oregon Ducks, though, in the end were just too much. Washington State, I felt like, really bounced back from a tough loss at home against Arizona. But in the end, the Ducks running game and the Duck defense were too much for Washington State.
Yeah, that running game was crazy. Bucky Irvin did his thing. It was like 7 plays that equated for over 220 yards. It was crazy, man. We knew it was going to be tough out there. The Cougs hung in there for a little bit. They were up 10-3 at some point. Once the second half came around, man, the Ducks did their thing. Tip your cap to the Ducks. Time to move on, man. Time to be strong. We're going to be all right. Now it's time for the opening drive brought to you by Valley Buick GMC. See you in the Valley. Yeah, man, it was tough for us over there in Eugene, in Autzen. It's a tough place to play, man. Like I said, we've all been there before. And, the Cougs showed some fight. Cam Ward had himself a decent day, 34 of 48, 438 yards, 1 touchdown. They were moving the ball, man. They did some positive things. They were up at one point in the first and second quarter, went into halftime only down a couple of points. We saw some explosive plays. The defense did allow a lot of explosives, but they also made some plays all around. It was a fight. You look at the score, and it could be deceiving. You could think that the Ducks kind of just did whatever they wanted to. They did have explosive plays, but it wasn't easy for them.
No, not at all. I mean, you talked about that halftime score, 17-13 Ducks. Really in the end, Washington State couldn't go into Autzen Stadium and kick field goals. In my opinion, it was a race to 30 points, and the Ducks got there first. And, Washington State lost what coaches like to call the middle 8. That's that 4 minutes right before halftime and that 4 minutes right after halftime where Cougs got stopped on a 4th down, Ducks go down and score. Cougs come back, kick a field goal right before half, but you lose that last 4 minutes 7-3, and then you come out of halftime and you stop the Ducks right away. Defense went 3 and out. It was awesome. But then the Cougs got backed up inside their own 5, couldn't get out of there, punted, short field, Ducks go down and score, and now, like I said, you lose that middle 8 because they score 7 points in the first 4 minutes of the second half, and I just think, the Cougs had a hard time recovering. They had another 4th down opportunity late in the game. Ball got batted down. Lincoln Victor was wide open. Would have been another catch for Lincoln, who had a monster day. But in the end, Ducks just made too many plays. That's the reality of it. And that's why, probably they're the number 9, top 10 team in the country coming into this game because they've got great athletes on the field. And Washington State, I think the depth showed up a little bit at different spots. You definitely saw some bright spots, like you said, Cam Ward, Lincoln Victor. I thought the offensive line played really well. So there were some moments. So hopefully the Cougs can build on this game and, find a way to improve heading down this back stretch of the season.
Yeah, it's tough, man. You can't not take advantage of opportunities, especially when you're playing against a guy who has the most starts in college football history in Bo Nix, with over 50 at this point. This guy's been there, he's done that, and he's really accurate, right? And I think you mentioned the offensive line for Washington State played well at times. They did give up a couple of sacks, but there was glimpses, right? And I think that's the difference between the Cougs and the Ducks, right? The Ducks are able to capitalize on these opportunities, and the Cougs get there and they miss a couple, but then they show that they can still handle it. End of the day, this might be good for them. I know it's never good to lose, right? You lose to Arizona, you lose to Oregon. That's not what you want, but you take these opportunities to learn and look for the progress. And the progress I saw was Cam Ward really bouncing back and showing that he can make plays against a pretty good defense in the Pac-12. We're going to need him to down the stretch, man. Not too many games left, but I see a lot of games in front of us that we can win.
Yeah, there absolutely is. You talked about that offense getting back on track. That's exactly what the doctor ordered. Cougar offense had been anemic through the last 2 losses, finally showed up against Oregon, and one of the guys that really showed up was Lincoln Victor. We're going to talk about him after the break in our Talking Numbers segment. Talkin Cougars is presented by Flat Stick Pub. Welcome back to Talkin Cougars. It's time now for Talkin Numbers, presented by Cross Country Mortgage, making every mortgage feel like a win. I mean, the numbers we got to talk about, Bump, and this has got to be close to your heart. Another number 5 playing receivers, Lincoln Victor. 16 catches on the day in Autzen Stadium. That is a Washington State football record for single game receptions in a game, man. He was off the chain all day. And the reality is, when Lincoln Victor's on the field, this offense is better. And he showed it. He beat man coverage. He made contested catches. He was open in zones. He did everything. I mean, he caught a fly sweep at one point. He's running the football. I tell you what, man, huge day from Lincoln.
Yeah, he really showed that he might be the catalyst to this offense. Obviously, you got to depend on your offensive line to protect Cam Ward to get the ball to your receivers. But the game is just different when Lincoln Victor is out there. And I love the way that they used him. You mentioned, right, he caught a fly sweep. He's going across the middle, down the sideline, the underneath stuff, the over-the-top stuff. I mean, he's a guy now that you call an extra meeting guy going forward. Teams are going to have to game plan on how to stop Lincoln Victor. And it's been great to see his development over the past few years. There was a time where this guy was really an afterthought in this offense. But from the start of the season, you felt like he was going to be implemented into this offense. And I understand why. He has the savviness to understand the soft spots in the defense and also has the quickness and understanding of man coverage to attack leverage and get himself open. Then also, Cam Ward has to drop dimes on him. That's exactly what he does. It was fun to watch him do his thing, man. 16 receptions, 161 yards is nuts. The best I did was about 12 and a buck 20 against USC. So it's nice to see another number 5 doing his thing.
I mean, 12 for 120 against SC back in the heydays, ain't bad, bump. If I remember correctly, that might have been 06 when that was like a top 5, maybe top 3 team for SC. Really good defense. So, man, good on you. I remember that day vividly. Lincoln, he told me after the game, and I thought this was really cool how, he feels like Ben Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator, and new wide receiver coach Nick Edwards have given him a ton of confidence in his game. He always knew he was a good player and that he could make an impact on the field, but they're up there, they're loving him up. They're telling him that, he's going to get involved. This is talking back to spring ball and training camp, and he's rewarded their confidence, right? He not only did he have 16 catches, he had 21 targets.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 3 or 4 more opportunities out there, right? Sometimes the ball just misses by a little bit. That one got batted down on 4th down. Can you imagine? I mean, he could have had 20 catches. Is not that far out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and what this is going to do, too, this is going to allow the other receivers to eat as well. When a player gets that many targets, 20 targets, 16 receptions, teams are going to have to start bracketing. They're going to keep a safety over them. You're going to have to defenses are going to communicate where is number 5, where is Lincoln Victor, and that's going to get the other guys open too. Kyle Williams had himself a game. He had 5 receptions for 102 yards as well. So it's a chain reaction that I feel like is going to happen, and I'm glad that Lincoln Victor was the link to really start this thing because he deserves it. He's been there for a while, and there's nothing like an offensive coordinator and your receiver coach instilling confidence in you and believing in you. That can take your game to the next level, and then, of course, your quarterback has got to throw the rock.
Yeah, 100%. As you think about that, Arizona State game coming up, if they're going to play man coverage like they did against the Huskies, where they really challenge those UW receivers, Lincoln Victor is going to be the difference maker. He was against Oregon. Oregon tried to play man coverage just like UCLA and Arizona did, and they couldn't do it, because Lincoln was unguardable in the middle of the field. And then to your point, once the focus comes on him or teams start trying to play zone to take away that middle of the field throws for Lincoln Victor, now that ball goes outside to Kyle Williams and Josh Kelly. And like you said, those other guys get involved.
Yep, get the guys involved. Keep the rub routes going too, man. I love the layers, the overlap and the underneath, and all that good stuff. And we got more to talk about when we come back. Talkin Cougars is presented by Flat Stick Pub. Let's take a look at our Coug Spotlight presented by Coug First. Think Coug First for products, services, and hiring. All right, man, let's talk about some of these matchups. The one I got to look at, of course, I'm a receiver, call me biased. I'm looking at ASU's Elijah Badger. He has 472 yards and 2 touchdowns. I remember I covered their game last year when they beat University of Washington at home, and this guy played a big role in that. I'm not the real biggest guy, but he is quick. He's tall and he is fast. He's not afraid to go up top and grab the football out the air. Bourget, that young quarterback over there, the Arizona native, is going to have to lean on this guy. And now I got to look at that secondary, man. We have, as you mentioned plenty of times before, B, we got some corners who are going to play in the NFL one day. It always starts with the safety and Hicks, but then you got Lampkins and everybody else who gets involved. You got to keep your eye on this guy. Arizona wants to throw the football. They average 249 passing yards per game in the Pac, so that's 7th in the pack. So not a real strong offensive attack when it comes to throwing the football, but we know that's what they want to do. They average 343 yards total offense. That's last in the Pac-12. So we can't allow these guys to all of a sudden be a really explosive team. We saw what they did to UW. They kept them in check. We can't allow them to open this thing up. It starts with Elijah Badger, a very polished receiver. He's got some experience. He's played in some big games already.
Yeah, and Xavier Guillory, a Spokane native actually, who came from Idaho State of the Big Sky, an all Big Sky performer, came in the transfer portal to Arizona State, gives them a little bit of depth at that receiver position too. And, Kenny Dillingham, the head coach for Arizona State, former offensive coordinator at Oregon. He's a really bright offensive mind. He knows how to get guys open. Like you mentioned, Bourget, former walk-on, has worked his way up. He's finding ways to distribute. Keep talking about that Arizona State offense. They had their best rushing performance last week against the Washington Huskies, 145 yards rushing. And I think, to me, that's a matchup I'm looking at, is that Arizona State running game as it starts to improve against a Washington State defensive line and linebacking core that really struggled the last 3 weeks to stop the run against UCLA, Arizona, and obviously Oregon. Dillingham is going to find ways to match those schemes. And he's got a good running back. Cam Scatabo, the transfer from Sacramento State, another Big Sky player. He was the offensive player of the year in the Big Sky. And look, it might be a level down a little bit, but if you're a good football player or one of the best football players in the Big Sky, you are really, really talented. And you've seen it from Scatabo this year. I mean, he's really played well. As Arizona State started to get a little bit better as the season's worn on, he's been a key piece of the puzzle, Bump.
Yeah, man, he's a good ball player. He's also one of the few running backs in D1 football to have a couple of touchdown passes to his name. Scatabo is going to be a guy that you have to watch. He reminds me kind of like a Max Borghi, but kind of like the Kirkland signature version, right? He's not like the real thing, but he does some things that he can do. ASU averaged 103 yards on the ground. That's 10th in the Pac-12 again. I don't want these guys to be something that they're not. But you mentioned it, right? You talk about Wade and how he has some film to study and say, look, how can I get better? What can I work on? Lampkin, the same thing. You mentioned how he's one of the leaders when it comes to passes defending. He had one in the end zone that I thought wasn't a flag. They called a PI on my man. I got your back, Lampkin, don't trip. But the same thing for Arizona State. They're going to look at that film against UW and say, you know what, guys, we can play. We can run the football. We can throw the football. We can handle a passing offense that wants to throw the football down the field. So I think you're looking at two teams that have the same approach but coming off of different results, right? You got one team that almost took down within a couple of points one of the best teams in the country. You got another team that hung in there in the Washington State Cougars for a while but kind of let it slip away towards the end. They're looking at the film and saying, both of them saying, if we can correct these wrongs, we're going to be in this ball game. So I think that's what makes Arizona dangerous, because I know they respect WSU. I know WSU respects Arizona State, but they're coming off of a quality loss if there is one. So you got to look out for them.
Yeah, in Arizona State, I mean, it's eerily similar as Arizona, right, who had just taken USC to triple overtime and then comes into Washington State, into Pullman, and played really well. And I think the point there is that Washington State cannot let Arizona State get off to a fast start and start to feel that energy, right? And you're playing in Tempe, you're playing at, the Sun Devils are playing at home. So if they get that energy, get the crowd into it, they're going to be even more fired up. And so I think for Washington State, it's vital that they start fast and they don't let that running game get going. Really, they don't let the offense get going for Arizona State, because the offense had struggled early in the year and has since found its footing. And Washington State's defense, I mean, to me, that's the calling card of the Cougs. So they have to find a way to shore up some of those issues. They had tons of problems fitting their gaps in the run game. That's linebackers and that's safeties, right? And they've got to figure that out heading into this matchup versus the Sun Devils. If they don't figure it out, it's going to be another big day running the football, against that Coug defense.
And the O-line has to be ready to go. I believe Cam Ward was sacked 5 or 6 times against Eugene. You look at the way, in Eugene, you look at the way Arizona State attacked UW, man, they sent 5, 6, 7 guys at a time, putting pressure on Michael Penix Jr. You look at the box score, you see no sacks on Penix, but you see the pressure. That's why he threw a couple of interceptions. That's why he fumbled the football. They were sending them from everywhere, playing man on the back end. So yeah, you can't let the offense all of a sudden be explosive, but you got to be ready for pressure with this offensive line and Cam Ward. They will send these guys from everywhere. I'm excited for the challenge, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be a great football game, and one Washington State's got to have. I mean, this is that time of year, late October, as you get into November. This is where seasons are made. And Washington State's on a slide right now, but they've got a ton of winnable games in front of them, starting with this game down in Tempe. And I think within all these matchups we're talking about, there's going to be some impact players that we got to talk about coming up next. Talkin Cougars is presented by Flat Stick Pub. Welcome back to Talkin Cougars. It's time now for our best bet, brought to you by Northern Quest Resort and Casino, largest casino in the Northwest. Bump, I got to roll the dice here on who's going to make an impact against the Arizona State Sun Devils. To me, it's got to be R.J. Stone. Stone was all over the place against Oregon. I felt like he made life really hard for Bo Nix. I mean, he got him off his spot. He was chasing him down, forced a couple holding penalties, but he didn't have a sack. And sometimes that's a misleading stat, obviously, because D linemen and D ends can make an impact even when they're not finishing with sacks. But between Brennan Jackson and R.J. Stone, one sack between the two of them over the last 3 weeks. It's time for those big boys on the edges to make a difference. We talked about that Arizona State offense trying to get going. The fastest way for the Coug defense to stop that is for those rush ends to make a huge impact on Trenton Bourguet and make his life uncomfortable and get him on the ground.
Yeah, I agree, man. There were a couple times where I saw RJ get so close to Bo Nix, and then they blow the whistle, plays dead or something, and they dap each other up, and Bo's like, you almost got me there. I feel like that was the identity of that football game last week. You're so close to making a play, but I completely agree with you, man. It's all about the big boys down on that defensive line. You don't have too many explosive options for Arizona State, and you have a quarterback in Bourguet that's just getting his feet wet. Like I mentioned last year, he played in some games, made some plays, but this year he's the man, so you got to disrupt whatever he's doing. Me personally, I'm going to go with the running backs. Once again, this is my third plea to get the run game.
Keep banging the drum, Bump. Keep banging the drum.
Come on, man. We need the run game to get going. You got Watson and you got Payne. Watson is only averaging like 2.1 yards per carry. Payne is averaging a little over 6. He has a big run of 52. That's the longest run of the year so far for the Cougs. Watson's longest run is 17 yards, just more explosive. What did Jonathan Gannon say for the Cardinals? Right? We need more explosive. The run game is just going to open everything up. And I wouldn't be begging Breek if I didn't think that we could do it. All right? I've seen it done before from the kid Watson. So, man, I got to go there. But you're going to mention a couple guys, too, that we should look at.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of young guys, right? No Jenkins for the rest of the season, and you got a couple of young guys that got to step up. Jovensky Schlembaker, the young sophomore from Squalicum up in Bellingham, and another Washington high school football product, Leo Pulalasi from Lakes High School in Tacoma, the young freshman. Those two guys might end up getting some run. We saw Schlembaker step in against Oregon a little bit late in the game. I think right now, though, it's the Watson and Payne show. I think you're right. And those two guys, to your point, can do it. They both did it last year, right, with a very similar, if not the same, almost offensive line. So I do think that they can get it going. Frankly, they ran the ball better against Oregon, although it wasn't huge stat-wise. They didn't have a ton of negative plays. And a little bit of that, to me, Bump, and then maybe you saw the same thing, was more zone blocking, right. Kind of trying to get the whole group of linemen moving on the same level and then climbing to the next level and letting Watson and Payne just find the creases. And I thought that was an improvement. You definitely moved the line of scrimmage on some 4th and shorts and 3rd and shorts, which was great. The next thing for this running game for Washington State is to make the big plays, the big hitters, and try and get a couple of those things going. And I think if they can do that against Arizona State, that's going to go a long way in continuing to let this offense evolve. I think it's vital, I'm with you, to get that run game going.
Yeah, I love zone runs for exactly what you mentioned. You allow the running back to kind of pick and choose where he wants to go. You press one gap, you look for the cutback. And also what that does, it can open up your RPO game. I think Cam Ward is a perfect candidate for that RPO game, especially when you got Lincoln Victor getting going in the slot, right? You leave the DN uncovered, you option him, or you leave that second level linebacker uncovered and you throw off of him. So the more you can do, the better. But as much as we like to throw the football, I think we realized that we had something special in a guy like Jerome Harrison back there who could run the ball and open the game up. A guy like
No
Dwight
doubt.
Tardy who can open the game up. So that's what we're looking for. You don't have to have 150 rushing yards solo on the ground. But if Nikhil Watson can pick up 60 to 70, Payne can get up there and pick up 50 to 60, then now you're a threat on the ground. Everything else opens up, and Cam Ward is even more comfortable back there. Get after the quarterback, run the football. We're talking like we don't have one of the best passing games in all the land, but it is what it is.
It's hard for me to imagine. I can't even wrap my head around a Coug running back having 60-plus yards rushing this year. Just hasn't been it, you know what I mean? Which is hard to say because last year Watson was so good. The years before that, you had Max Borghi. I mean, really in this spread air raid system, you know, and Boobie Williams before that, James Williams before that, Washington State's had really good running backs and really productive running backs. It's hard, you know, to see that Coug running game not get turned over. You hope it happens because, you know, I hate to say this, Bump, but you're kind of getting in must-win territory, right? You started the season 4-0, you lost 3 straight, and now it's time to figure out, can you get bowl eligible? And you've got some games here with Arizona State and then Stanford and Cal and Colorado before the Apple Cup. You got a chance to get some wins on the board, but it's got to start happening now. And that means all 3 phases have to play together for this team to make sure they can come out on top in the desert.
All right, there it is. You heard it from the QB, man. When he speaks, y'all better listen. He know what he talk about, man. Hey, you want more of what I do here? This is the end of Talkin Cougars. But you can find me at MichaelBumpus5 on Twitter. Also on Saturdays, I work for the Pac-12 Network. I'll be in the studio this week. And then on Sundays, I'm one of the voices for the Seattle Seahawks in pre-halftime and post-game show.
I love Bump representing on Pac-12 Network for the Cougs. I'm Alex Brink. You can catch me on Twitter at AlexBrink10, and I will be on the call with Jessamine McIntyre and Matt Chasnow. Hopefully I won't have to do the play-by-play this week like I did last week with Jess stepping in for Matt, who had some voice troubles. It was fun. That's not my role. I'm going to be the analyst this week down in the desert. Thank you all for tuning in. Look forward to next week when we can recap the game versus the Sun Devils and look ahead to the rest of the season. Go Cougs.